June 11th, 1955, a one-ton race car goes airborne at 150 miles per hour and comes down in a packed crowd. 84 people die. This disaster, and the four others in this video, all started the same way, with 1 second and one small decision. France, the Le Mans circuit, the most prestigious endurance race on the planet, with 300,000 spectators packed along the track. It is hour 3 of a 24-hour marathon, and the leaders are trading the fastest laps ever seen here. 6:26 in the evening, Jaguar driver Mike Hawthorne brakes hard for an unplanned pit stop. Behind him, Lance Macklin swerves left to avoid him, directly into the path of Pierre Levegh's Mercedes, closing in at 150 miles per hour. Levegh has less than 1 second to react. His Mercedes clips Macklin's car and launches like a ramp jump. It strikes the earth bank and disintegrates. The engine, the front axle, the hood. They scythe through the crowd like blades. The magnesium body ignites into white flames that water cannot put out. And here is the fact that is hard to believe. The race was not stopped. Officials feared that 300,000 people leaving at once would block the ambulances. So while rescuers worked, the cars kept racing past the wreckage for another 21 hours. 83 spectators died, along with Levegh himself. The fallout changed motorsport forever. France, Spain, and Germany suspended racing. Switzerland banned circuit racing entirely for decades. And every modern safety barrier you see at a racetrack today was born from that 1 second in 1955. December 11th, 1990. Interstate 75 near Calhoun, Tennessee. It is 9 in the morning, and traffic is moving at full highway speed. Just ahead, in a low stretch of the interstate, sits a fog bank so dense that drivers inside it cannot see past their own windshield. That fog was not entirely natural. Right beside the highway stood the Bowater paper mill. Federal investigators would later conclude that vapor rising off the mill's waste ponds was feeding the fog bank, turning an ordinary morning haze into a wall of white. Just after 9 a.m., somewhere deep inside the fog, one driver touched his brakes. The car behind never saw him. Then the next one hit, and the next. Within minutes, 99 vehicles, cars, pickups, semi-trucks, had slammed into one another. Survivors described stepping out into a white void, listening to crash after crash they could not see. And here is the scandal. This exact stretch of highway had fog warning signs, installed after a deadly pileup 11 years earlier. But that morning, the northbound warning lights were not working at all, and the southbound lights had been flashing for 3 straight days, with no fog in sight. Drivers had simply stopped believing them. 12 people died on Interstate 75 that morning. 42 more were injured. Afterwards, Tennessee built one of the most advanced fog warning systems in the country on that stretch. Sensors, cameras, variable speed limits, and gates that can close the highway completely, because a warning system only works if drivers can still believe it. September 5th, 2013. Kent, England, 7:15 in the morning. Commuters are crossing the Sheppey Bridge, a mile-long crossing built with no street lighting, no fog sensors, and no warning signs of any kind. And on this particular morning, the bridge is wrapped in a fog so thick that drivers can barely see 2 car lengths ahead. At 7:15, the first cars collided, and then it simply did not stop. For 10 straight minutes, vehicles kept arriving at highway speed and vanishing into the wall of fog. Witnesses said they heard it more than they saw it. Bang, after bang, after bang. When the crashing finally ended, more than 130 vehicles lay tangled across the bridge, the largest road traffic accident in British history. Now for the number that nobody could believe. In a 130 vehicle pileup at highway speed on a bridge with zero protection, the death toll was 0. Not one single person died. 8 people were seriously injured. Around 60 more suffered cuts and bruises. But every driver and every passenger on that bridge went home alive. No one can say exactly why everyone survived. Luck, slower impacts, modern cars that crumple instead of shattering. What is certain is what that bridge was missing. Lighting, sensors, warnings. The same ingredients as Tennessee, 23 years apart, with a very different ending. February 28th, 2001. 6 o'clock in the morning, still pitch dark. Gary Hart had not slept at all that night. He had spent it talking on the phone. Now he was on the M62 motorway in Yorkshire, driving his Land Rover with a loaded trailer behind it, and fighting to keep his eyes open. Just before the village of Great Heck, his eyes closed. The Land Rover drifted off the motorway, ran down the embankment, and came to rest on the East Coast Main Line. Hart scrambled out and called for help, but bearing down on that exact spot at 125 miles per hour was the Morning Express with 99 people on board. The Express hit the Land Rover and somehow stayed upright, but the impact threw it off the rails. Seconds later, still traveling at over 100 miles per hour, the derailed train slammed head-on into a fully loaded coal train coming the other way. 1,800 tons of freight, a combined closing speed of 142 miles per hour. 10 people died at Great Heck that morning, including the drivers of both trains. 82 more were injured. Gary Hart was convicted of causing death by dangerous driving and served 2.5 years in prison. And the crash set a precedent that changed British law. Driving while exhausted is dangerous driving. February 11, 2021, Fort Worth, Texas. For 36 hours, the temperature had not climbed above freezing. On an elevated stretch of Interstate 35W, a thin film of ice had formed on the road, completely invisible in the dark. The road had been treated with brine 44 hours earlier, and a visual inspection just 45 minutes before disaster reported no moisture on the surface. At 6 in the morning, in the dark, vehicles began hitting that ice at highway speed. Cars spun into the barriers. Semi-trucks plowed into the wreckage behind them. Within minutes, more than 130 vehicles were crushed together into a pile nearly a mile long. 6 people died, and survivors climbed up onto the concrete barriers to avoid being crushed inside their own cars. The National Transportation Safety Board investigated for a year. Its conclusion was blunt. The road operators' monitoring of icing conditions was inadequate, and drivers were traveling far too fast for the conditions. The recommendations echoed Tennessee 31 years earlier. Weather sensors, better training, and speed limits that react to the road. 5 disasters, the same lessons, learned over and over and over again. Le Mans, 1955. Tennessee, 1990. Sheppey, 2013. Selby, 2001. Fort Worth, 2021. Different countries, different decades, different roads. But every single one began exactly the same way, with 1 second, a tap on the brakes, a swerve, a moment of closed eyes, a film of ice, and one small decision that turned it into history. So the next time you are behind the wheel and something feels wrong, fog, ice, or your own heavy eyelids, remember, every driver in these 5 stories thought it would be fine. You have one thing they did not, their story. And if you want the next one, it is about a catastrophe that engineers predicted 10 years before it happened, and nobody listened.